Hey everyone, Mr. P and Mr. Dave here, we're the Geeky Guys. And once again, we're exploring Doctors.
Yes, we're walking down the Doctor's timeline.
And we're not talking Dr. Zhivago.
No.
No, we're talking the Doctor. You know, the original, you might say.
Yeah, it's not even Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, although I'm surprised Jane Seymour wasn't a companion in any of the shows.
Or even Dr. What's the other one? Quincy.
Dr. Quincy, yes.
I'm talking about human lives.
Yes, not that one.
No, not that one. We're talking Doctor as in the Time Lord. Again, we're just sort of waffling on, really, aren't we? We're just enjoying a Sunday afternoon talking about Doctor Who.
Yeah.
On our journey through Doctors, we've already gone through Doctor Regeneration 1, 2, 3, and 4, which, if my maths is correct, brings us on to Doctor 5.
Indeed.
So Peter Davison now. Peter Davison, probably well known for being another vet, actually, doctor, talking about it in a British show called All Creatures Great and Small. But anyway, he came on to be the Fifth Doctor, and he had a bit of a daunting time being the Doctor, I think, because you followed Tom Baker, which we talked about in the last video, was like this big character that was well loved, and you know, Tom Baker, when he quit, I mean, just quickly going back to it 1 second, he actually did say it was probably time because he got a bit big for his boots as the Doctor when he was playing it. It got a bit
comfortable.
It got to his head a little bit, and he realised that it was probably time to step back and let someone else have a go. So we get Peter Davison. Now, Peter Davison was not the Doctor for as long as Tom Baker. He was only from 82 to 84. Now, we said that Tom Baker was the Doctor to 81.
Yeah.
Peter Davison took over as the Doctor in the January of 82 to 84. So he only did 2 years as the Doctor. And he started in an episode where, if I'm right, was it when he regenerated? I can't remember the first episode. I know it was called Castrovalia, but what happened? I don't remember that episode.
I remember the regeneration in the TARDIS.
He walks. He regenerates on the floor after he fell off the radio mast. Is that the one where he walks around the TARDIS a little bit confused for a while?
Yeah, I think so. It's a long while since I watched that.
He's looking for is it the blue room or the green room or the white room? There's a particular coloured room he's looking for in the TARDIS to sort of help the regeneration happen. Yeah. And he has a little bit of an issue with his regeneration, if I remember at the beginning. He's a bit unsteady and unsure of himself.
Yeah, and it was interesting as well, where at the time he was the youngest actor to have ever played the Doctor. I think up until Matt Smith, I think that record stood. And like you say, it was a very different style, different kind of actor from Tom Baker, slightly different, more reserved approach to the role. And certainly at the start, it was.
I always got the impression that he was a little bit unsure of himself as the Doctor sometimes.
Yeah.
And I got a bit more First Doctor vibe, as in, rather than be that proactive, run around and do stuff, it was more run away from things.
Yeah, a little bit more.
A little bit. Not to say that's anything bad against his Doctor at all.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's the impression I got a little bit more from his Doctor.
Yeah, and he was the brave Doctor, though. He was the one that went with the decorative vegetable, which was
the long white coat there, and the decorative vegetable, and the cricket gear.
The old cricket kind of thing going off, and the cricket jumper, and the cricket ball in the pocket, and all that sort of thing. So yeah, he was very youthful, very unsure Doctor who eventually, I think, found his feet by the time we got to the end in 84 in the caves of Andronzani.
Yeah, that was his last story.
You know, he's got a bit more of that, and I think you've said this before about the authoritarian about him. There's a bit more of that coming to him, and he's got a little bit more aggression and telling people how it's going to be towards the end.
It mirrors, it almost, I think, mirrors Jodie Whittaker, which we'll get to later on.
Yeah, there is an element of
There's
that.
Three things I want to point out and talk to you about, Dave, about his Doctor, which is like completely different to any other Doctor generally so far. So the first is that we had a companion die.
Yes, we did.
Which was the first time that had happened.
In Earthshock, wasn't it?
Yeah, so young Adric.
Yeah.
is killed, which is like, that was like a big thing, because like no companion had it was always, oh, you travel with the Doctor, it's all fun and games, but when you actually look back, it's not fun and games at all. They're always running from peril and danger all the time.
And everything,
and there's comments and things in later Doctors which we'll come to, such as Rose Tyler's mum saying, is she safe with your Doctor? And stuff.
And he can never guarantee that
100%,
can he? Because they're in dangerous situations all the time. You don't know how it's gonna end. But wasn't there a thing as well where they tied in the death of Adric and the spacecraft crashing into the Earth with like the death of the dinosaurs and stuff? They kind of used that element to kind of say that was how the dinosaurs died out, which was quite fun. And there was kind of the Cybermen didn't think that the Doctor would do it. They wasn't expecting the bravery of a companion, which has happened quite a lot through Doctor Who. Where it's suddenly like, oh, you don't think I'll do it, but it's safety of the Earth, safety of the universe, you watch me.
Yeah, and when it's weighed up and that's the balance, that's what we're going to do. The second thing about Peter Davidson's Doctor is it's not the first time we see him, it's not the only time we ever see him in Doctor Who. He comes back.
Yes, he has, hasn't he?
I think he came back. Did he come back in a multi-Doctor story? Or did he not?
He was in the Five Doctors, wasn't he? But wasn't that his era at the time?
I don't think there was no multi-Doctor story after that where he came back. But I thought the Sixth Doctor was in one. Maybe not.
Yes, he was in the Three Doctors.
In the Three Doctors, but that didn't have him in it, did it? That had the Second Doctor.
The Sixth Doctor.
Sixth Doctor. Did it have him in it?
Or was it the two? No, it might have been the Two Doctors, actually. I think it was just the Second and the Sixth, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. So he wasn't. But he came back anyway for a BBC here in the UK, Children in Need appeal, which is a charity appeal. And it's called Time Crash.
Yeah.
And it was the 10th Doctor's era, which was David Tennant.
That's right.
And he came back and did a little skit on the TARDIS, where he's like pulled through. Lovely little...
it was good fun, wasn't it? Where he'd not put the brakes on and he crashed into the side of the Titanic.
The spaceship Titanic.
Yeah, and basically they did kind of two TARDISes had like merged together, and you ended up with Peter Davison. They kind of explained because of the effect of what had happened with the two crashing together. That's why he was appearing older.
Can't fasten his jacket.
Yeah.
Oh, I get that a lot now, Dave. Not fastening his jacket.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
And the third thing was that Peter Davidson's daughter, you could say the Doctor's daughter, actually appears in a 10th Doctor episode with David Tennant.
Yes,
and after that episode, she then marries David Tennant.
Yeah,
so
she did.
The Doctor is married to the Doctor's daughter from the episode, but it's also the Doctor's daughter because it's the other Doctor's daughter.
Yeah,
and
Peter
now she's
Davison's
now the Doctor's wife.
Yes.
And if you want to unravel all that, good luck. It's probably a two-part problem.
Good old Georgia Moffat. We hope that we'd see a bit more of her, and she's done a bit in Big Finish actually.
Jenny,
which we're going to have to visit and look at how her story continues. But yeah, it was quite fun with the fact that we had the Fifth Doctor's daughter was in an episode with the 10th Doctor, and then marries the actor playing the 10th Doctor. Yeah, it's all a big Doctor Who family, isn't it?
Timey-wimey. And the last thing, I did say 3, I meant 4 things with Peter Davidson. Another big thing, we talked about sonic screwdrivers in the last video.
Yes, we did.
They got a little bit too reliable to open things up all the time, get out of every problem, because it was just into the 80s. It was all computers. You could just use the sonic to do anything. And the producers of the show decided that it was too much of a get out, and having the sonic around from a writing point of view was just too easy.
Yeah.
There was no challenge anymore, so they decided to take it away. So in a Doctor Who episode with Peter Davidson, he's in a cell somewhere, and he gets his sonic out, and someone shocks it out of his hand or something like that. It falls on the floor, and it's destroyed. He does make the line, actually, it feels like I've lost an old friend.
Yeah.
But from then on, we do not see the sonic screwdriver ever at all until the 9th Doctor, way back in the reboot of 2005.
Yeah, it disappeared a long time.
They took it out completely.
And I think Peter Davison as well, and I think he's mentioned this in interviews, that he kind of came into Doctor Who where the BBC was going a little bit against it and wasn't sure it was worth the money that was being spent on it. The writing was perhaps not quite as on point. A lot of the classic writers were not writing for the show anymore. But I think he did a good job with what he had. There was some standout episodes as well. It wasn't that it was all poor. There was quite a few good classic episodes in there as well. Some good appearances of the Master that were quite fun, who by then had changed again and got a beard. heard that before. Yeah, I think he did.
They referenced that in Time Crash, actually.
Yeah. Has he still got that beard and a wife? What?
Not that rubbish beard. Well, a wife.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite good fun.
We then move on because it was, like I say, Peter Davison time to end in 84.
And of course, he did come back as well for the 50th anniversary for the unofficial. He did.
We'll talk about that when we get a little bit closer onto it. But his just quickly, his companions were Adric and Nyssa and Tegan that was pulled over from the end of Tom Baker's era.
Yeah.
He ended up with Turlough further on, who is a bit of an interesting character.
Yeah, he started as a bit of a nemesis, a bit kind of against the Doctor,
trying to
sabotage him.
And comes along, and then Perry, of course, towards the end, played by Nicola Bryant.
Yeah.
Now, just one thing about the Regeneration. Peter Davidson's always been not bitter. This is not jokingly bitter about his regeneration, because he does this wonderful performance as the Doctor dying. But then Perry was dressed in an outfit which, if you'll excuse us, shows off quite a lot of chest as she's bending over as he's regenerating. And he's always commented that people aren't really paying any attention to his acting skills of his regeneration at all, which is rather amusing.
Yeah.
But anyway, we get past that, and we get to the sixth Doctor. Now, this is... Would I be right in saying that this Doctor is a little bit more the controversial Doctor?
Yeah, he's kind of... Colin Baker, the sixth Doctor, he's kind of like the reboot in a way. He's kind of like the Daniel Craig was the reboot to kind of like the Bond, a bit more towards the Bond from the books. Colin Baker was kind of a little bit more back towards the authoritarian, bit brash, bit heavy.
It's not the entire franchise we're talking about here. It's just his personality went back a little bit.
Regressed a little bit to kind of the first Doctor, and it was kind of the no-nonsense, brash, kind of would shout, would make a big speech kind of Doctor.
Would I be right in saying that Peter Davison still played it a little bit more human, whereas Colin Baker did play it completely alien? And you've got to expect that. This guy's an alien. He's a Time Lord. He's an alien. He's going to do things differently to what you would react normally.
Yeah.
You know? And even the eccentric dress wear, which, you know, it's the massive, big, multicoloured coat and multicoloured waistcoat. Everything about him was in your face. It was, you know, I'm the Doctor, here I am.
Yeah, I think that was the point when it was almost like the big bombastic side, a little bit of Tom Baker as well. There was that little bit of flair and puffing the chest out a little bit as well. So there was elements of the first and the fourth Doctor, I think, in Colin Baker's performance.
Now, he was, again, it was 2 years, so it was March 84 to December 86. He only had two companions during his time, which was Perry, of course, who came across from Peter Davison, and Mel, played by the wonderful Bonnie Langford. Bonnie Langford. And, I mean, Colin Baker really got the thin end of the wedge in terms of circumstances. We said that, obviously, the BBC pulling away from Doctor Who a bit during Peter Davison's tenure as the Doctor. By the time it got to Colin Baker, despite the fact the ratings were good, they never really went bad. They weren't as good as they'd been. They never really went bad. They were still good. They were constant. The BBC decided, or certain people at the BBC decided, that Doctor Who was no good anymore. They were going to just not do it anymore.
Yeah.
And there's a funny story Colin Baker tells about being in the car with the producer. I forget which one it is. Was it
John Nathan Turner? I think still at the time,
and his wife had said, "Oh, we're loving Doctor Who. When are you coming back and doing another series?" And at that point, he just found out that they weren't planning to do any more. They decided just to stop because they weren't that bothered. And John Nathan Turner had made that choice. So he's like, well, you'll have to talk to your husband.
Yeah.
And they were going to some kind of show or award thing or event. And it was horrible for him knowing that he wasn't coming back. And he never did.
I think the problem is that Doctor Who kind of got to a point, I think, sort of 1 to 4, where it kind of evolved, had the popularity, and the BBC put the time and money into it.
It plateaued.
And then I think once you got after kind of into maybe the last sort of few stories of Tom Baker, it started to regressing a little bit. And I didn't think you saw the development going forward. Obviously, the money dried up that was being put into the show. And so I think and they've said it themselves. I think sort of Peter Davison and Colin Baker had to make the most of what they got, and they had the wobbly sets, whereas there was technology to make it better at that time. But the BBC wouldn't spend the money on it.
That really carried on into the next Doctor, which we'll talk about in the next video.
Yeah. The other thing we ought to mention quick as well before it goes out of my mind is Colin Baker. It was the first time that somebody who had been in Doctor Who already as an actor in an episode actually came back into the show to play the Doctor.
He was an actor in a Tom Baker episode.
Yeah, he was a guard, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Which obviously we saw happen again with a later Doctor later on that we'll come to further down the line.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the first time that had happened, which surprised a lot of people. It's like, oh, I've seen him before.
And another thing, just lastly, to talk about Colin Baker, or two things really. One is that we got Trial of a Time Lord, which was a multi-story, which we'd had Key to Time with Tom Baker, but this was another big multi-story, and it they switched companions really quickly with not really great explanations as to why.
No, that was strange.
We saw a lot of the Time Lords. And we saw the Doctor opposing the Time Lords and them opposing what he's doing again. And they kind of, we mentioned this way back in a different video when the third Doctor came onto the screen, and we said that he'd been punished for interfering.
Yeah.
On this one, he's on trial again. And although the trial was somewhat not genuine, we'll say.
Yeah. And I mean, you've got the Master in there as a witness for the prosecution and things as well, which is not great to have your big nemesis in the dock trying to take you down.
I think, to be fair, you could argue against that. And say, well, actually, you're taking his word, and he's done all these things. Really.
Yeah, he's not really the best witness to trust, is he? Really?
No.
Yeah.
But, we then had a regeneration sequence of Colin Baker regenerating into Sylvester McCoy.
Yes.
However, that's not actually what happened.
No.
Colin Baker was invited back to do the regeneration, but kind of said, look, I'm not bothered. You didn't really want me there. So
I think he was obviously disappointed that he wasn't asked back to carry on.
It was, he's quite within his right just to say, look, you kind of, he didn't.
I mean, he said in interviews in the past that he would have been happy to do a few more series of the Doctor if, if they dealt with it the right way, if they kept him in the role and not messed him about, and they kept John Nathan Turner on, and they kept the writing good and a bit of money being put in it, he probably would have carried on as the Doctor for a few years.
However, he wasn't. So what happened? Well, they had Sylvester McCoy come in, who's playing the next Doctor, which we'll talk about in the next episode. He had to put on the clothes and sort of sit there with a wig.
And lie with the wig on.
Yeah, in sort of a similar position. And then just sort of come over and then regenerate into Sylvester McCoy. I'm going to be talking about that in the next video, Dave.
We are.
Stay tuned as we talk about 7 and 8 in the next video.